I made a Fury Prot Warrior guide, I also made a low level tanking guide, and in both guides I did not use a shield. And I immediately got a swarm of the same old comments: "Oh Medina, you cannot tank without a shield, you're crazy, you're gonna die, what are you? Are you some sort of Latin American twink?" Well, this video is not gonna confirm or deny that, but I am gonna teach you what a shield is, because I think a lot of people overestimate what a shield can do. They come from retail where shields actually do something. But what do I always tell you about vanilla? Tanking doesn't make no damn sense. And shields are no exception. So let's talk about it. A shield goes in the offhand slot. That means you cannot have an offhander weapon. So by having a shield, you sacrifice the offhander damage and the offhander rage generation. But how much is that? An offhander is gonna hit for half of a normal weapon. That's one of the penalties. But you take this talent in Fury right here, which is 25% damage. So your offhander is gonna do 25% more damage. 25% to 50% is 62.5%. That's the actual damage you get out of an offhander compared to a normal main hander weapon. There is also a 14% missing penalty, of course, but if you get Heroic Strike queued, while Heroic Strike is queued, the miss penalty doesn't apply for whatever reason. I think it is a bug. People argue with what is it at all time. It doesn't matter, okay? If you queue Heroic Strike and you hit with your offhander, you're not gonna have the offhander penalty. It will still do 62% damage, but it will not miss as much. Overall though, that is only white auto attacks. How much white auto attacks are we talking about? It kinda depends on the gear, but you should be looking at somewhere like 18, 15 to 20% of extra damage, overall damage. And that's actually a lot, but that doesn't mean 15 to 20% more threat, because not all your threat comes from damage. About 70% of your threat is actual damage, and the rest is just Thunder Armor or Revenge and stuff like that. So even in the good scenario where you get 20% more threat from an offhander, you get about 14% more threat, usually less. So no, having an offhander will not make you a tanking machine. It's not gonna make your threat in Ragnaros go up by a lot, but it will be a little bit, and that little bit counts when you're pushing for threat, because people are gonna pump you for everything you got, just like me at the gas station every Sunday. So it is not a huge amount of threat that you sacrifice by taking a shield, I will give you that. However, it is a quadrillion rage, and when you do not have a lot of gear or when you are not taking a lot of damage, that actually matters, because your white hits are all your rage generation when you don't take damage, and 62% is 62% more freaking rage, and that is definitely something you're gonna feel. Also keep in mind there is a point about when you get full tier 2 or so, where you actually do not scale anymore with anything, because your tanking abilities do not scale. Once again, tanking doesn't make any damn sense. Thunder Armor, Revenge, they do the same amount of flat threat, and if you wanna push yourself forward from that, all you can do really is get more damage. So dual wielding gets better the later the game goes through because of that reason. The more the game goes on, the more DPSers get better at DPSing, and you get better at tanking slower than them. So that's why we go Fury, right? Because the only way to get a threat that matches the DPSers is to DPS as hard as them, which is dumb, but that's what it is. So yes, we established dual wielding is objectively more threat, is objectively more rage, but Medina, aren't you going to die if you don't put on a shield? Isn't like the boss gonna give you a urinary tract infection or something? Like you cannot possibly survive a boss without a shield. What is a shield? A shield is block. What is block? You got a certain chance, you can make it a guaranteed chance to block the next attack when you got a shield on you. What is a block though? What is the actual action of blocking? Well, every time you block an attack, you take the damage of the attack minus your block value. I know you might think, oh, in retail it's like minus 30%, it's a big deal, you gotta get your blocking, yada yada. Well, in here, this is what it means. This is the Draconian Deflector, the almighty Draconian Deflector, the glorious holy shield that's gonna last you all the way into Blackwing Lair. This thing is the best if you get it in Ubers. You're gonna get used to this shield because it's gonna be all you get in your life. And it has a value of 40. A mob hits you, and you block it and you take 40 less damage. It doesn't matter if it is a kobold in Elwyn Forest or if it is Ragnaros hitting you for 3000, you are gonna block for 50 freaking damage. You get block value from strength. Wanna know the ratio? Okay, the ratio is crazy. It is 1 every 20 strength. So you get 20 strength and you're gonna block for 1 more point of damage. A level 60 guy with like really good gear, maybe it's gonna block for like 150. That would be insane. So yeah, the actual blocking is worthless. You don't block any damage at all, especially tanking bosses. When you're tanking AoE, you might have a better argument for that because you know a lot of tiny mobs reducing 40, maybe that actually matters for that situation. But the real benefit to blocking is not the blocking itself, it's the fact that when you block an attack, the attack cannot crit and the attack cannot crush. And this is the reason that nobody takes defense cap, because if you really don't want to get crit, you just put on a shield, you do shield block, and there you go. You are not gonna get crit anyway. Crushing blows are just like a tiny version of a crit. I don't recall if it is like 40% more damage or something. It doesn't matter. It is just another type of crit that bosses can do, and if you get a shield and you block it, they cannot do it. That's something that defense cannot even do. So yeah, they are really good for preventing that. And there is definitely situations, there is definitely bosses that can kill you when they crit. They are not in Molten Core. For example, if you're tanking Patchwork at 5%, he's gonna enrage. In that situation, you probably wanna put on a shield so you don't get crit and die. Also, another important thing about shields is that you need a shield to do shield wall. And that's actually a big deal. There is a lot of mechanics in vanilla that you can brute force through by using a shield wall. And you should definitely get a shield swap in macro so you can put on a shield quickly in a fight and then pop shield wall, which is on the GCD. God knows why it is on the GCD. It shouldn't be. It is dumb. But anyway, you are gonna need to shield wall at some point and you're gonna need to put on a shield quickly for that moment. But for the most part, if you get crit, that is not a big deal. As a matter of fact, you wanna get crit because if you're a Fury Prot, you're gonna have this talent and rage. You get 25% extra damage when you get crit. That is awesome. So in a nutshell, when you need a shield, you really need it, and you gotta look for those fights and you gotta prepare for that. You gotta know, okay, when Patchwork enrages, I'm gonna swap to a shield. Okay, when this damage goes through for the raid, I'm gonna put on a shield and shield wall to help the healers, stuff like that. But a crit is not a devastating thing. That's also another thing. A boss in Molten Core is gonna hit you the hardest hitting bosses out there. They're gonna hit you for something like 2000, and that's before armor, so 2000 base damage. If they get a crit, that's double damage. That is a 4k hit. That is terrifying. That is very much terrifying. But if you take pre-raid vesting slot gear, okay, if you get actual gear, not even crazy, no tier 1 here, no tier 1 to see here, you already got 4800 HP. You can survive that crit. This is before buffs, this is before all the mitigation, before the priest HP buff, of course, not to mention Dire Maul buff. Once you get it, that's 15% extra HP. So even the worst, the slowest and hardest hitting bosses in Molten Core are not going to one-shot you if they crit. They are gonna be a problem for the healers. The healers are not gonna be happy to heal you, and you are gonna need to get at least 2 healers on you the entire time, and they're gonna have to be pre-casting heals and canceling them the entire time. They cannot heal anybody else but you. That's annoying, but hey, if you gotta crank what you gotta crank to get your threat going, they absolutely can heal through that. Especially if you get a druid rolling you hots the entire time and you get like a priest spamming shields whenever he can and stuff like that, you're gonna be fine. It is scary, but it is not something that you cannot deal with. Now, okay, I said that was before armor, so what is armor? Armor is a flat reduction to all the physical damage you take. Now, how much armor do we sacrifice for not taking a shield? Well, we sacrifice exactly 2153 armor because that's the Draconian Deflector. That's the only shield you're gonna be using. We went over that. So before that, we had an armor of about 7000, and that was a reduction of about 55.8% of the damage you take. So if you get hit by 100, you take 45 damage, more or less, right? Now let's get rid of the shield here. Let's get rid of that shield. Now we have 4500 armor. So we went from 55.8 reduction to 45.4. Oh boy, are we gonna take 10% more damage? No, we are gonna take 23% more damage. And that's scary. That is scary. But there is another thing that is 2000 armor, okay? What is 2000 armor? You guys know. The Greater Stone Shield Potion, which you should be popping anyway, is 2000 armor and you can keep it on you the entire fight. So that will almost perfectly nullify not having a shield when it comes to armor, and here's the other cool cool thing about armor. We are doing a trade-off here where we go from a stone shield plus a shield to only a shield, right? So we started from 55.8 and now we take 2000 more armor. 8900 armor at level 60 is actually only 60% damage reduction. So armor in vanilla has diminishing returns. The more armor you get, the less you reduce each point of armor you get. Going from 1000 armor to 2000 armor is a huge deal, but going from 10,000 armor to 12,000 armor, it barely does anything. So what you are essentially messing with here is a 5% reduction difference, not even 20%, when you pop a stone shield, and that is a very manageable number. Once again, it is annoying, you're gonna take more damage and you're gonna feel it, but it will not be something that you cannot deal with. So that's it for the damage part of the shield, okay? You are not gonna die, most likely, if you do not have a shield, as long as you're popping your stone shield, because once again, you trade a 23% gap to a 5% gap, and that's a big deal. You cannot dual wield tank without a stone shield, I will give you that. But yes, if you do not get that much more threat when you dual wield, and you do not take that much more damage when you do not have a shield, when should you have a shield and when should you have a dual wield? The real answer is that you should be dual wielding whenever you can get away with it. You are not gonna die from not having a shield in Molten Core. You are not gonna die from not having a shield in most of Blackwing Lair. I would say you need a shield for Nefarian because of the class call. That's kinda scary. Probably wanna pop a shield on Ebon Rock too because of the trash thing. Sometimes you can get unlucky and that's annoying. And of course there is a lot of fights in Nax Ramas. All the resistance fights actually, like for example Jujuran or Visidos, where you need nature resistance and all the raid is gonna hit like a wet noodle anyway because they are all in full resistance. You might as well put on a shield because threat is not gonna be an issue. They are all hitting like wet noodles. Saphiron too, you know, frost resistance fight. People are gonna hit like wet noodles. You might as well put on a shield. Loatep, you're gonna get crunk if you don't put on a shield. But anywhere else, any other fight, you don't need to put on a shield. And on the other sense, okay, let's say for example that you are not in a very good guild or you are like super cranked out of your mind in tanking and you're in an old trade or something. I don't know. So assume that your DPSers suck and you got a good decent threat lead all the time. Well, the opposite, you might as well put on a shield then. You are not chained, you are not locked to having a shield or a dual wield the entire time. I got a macro, I got plenty of macros in the Warrior Discord in my channel for Warrior macros. You can put on a shield with a single button, a shield and a main hander in the freaking fight, in the middle of the fight. If you get a 50% threat lead, if you're super ahead of everything, right, you might as well change back to a shield. You can do that. You can build up a threat lead early on with dual wield, and once you feel that you're secure, you can go to a shield if you want. You might want to prepare ahead of time for a mechanic, like Patchwork. Very well, when he enrages, he's gonna destroy me, so at 5% I'm gonna put on a shield and I'm gonna shield wall, but that doesn't mean that you cannot crank him the first part of the fight all you want. You definitely can do that. And a good tank is able to use both at the same time. And that's gonna be the conclusion, that's gonna be the answer. Do you need a shield? Yes'nt. We are now streaming the leveling on Twitch, so you might want to check it out. It's gonna be down in the comments. And subscribe, join the Discord, and thank you for watching.